An alien werewolf survivor I found in the rubble became my partner. The old firefighter cleared the final beam, his muscles screaming. A golden gaze met his, not human but filled with a raw, powerful emotion that promised unending devotion. He had saved her life, and in that moment she decided his belonged to her. He moved with the practiced economy of a man who understood ruin. Thorn, a retired firefighter, navigated Ethelberg's fractured landscape, each careful step avoiding twisted rebar and shattered plasteel. The planetary shield malfunction had ripped through the city, leaving its proud spires as jagged teeth against a bruised sky. His breath plumed in the cold air, a rhythm against the silent devastation. He sought any flicker of life, any sign amidst the dust that coated everything. A faint, strained whimper cut through the silence. Thorn froze, his head tilting. It was too soft for human, too raw for animal. He followed the sound, his heavy boots crunching over debris until he reached a precarious pile of wreckage. A beam, half-snapped, balanced precariously over a smaller cavity. The whimper came again, closer now, laced with a desperate fear. He dropped to his knees, peering into the gloom. Two golden eyes met his, wide with pain and primal terror. Below them, a muzzle of rich red fur, a flash of sharp teeth, and a crimson paw trapped beneath a fallen support. It was not human. It was a creature of myth, a werewolf, undeniably real and deeply distressed. "Easy now," Thorn said, his voice a low, steady rumble. He kept his movements slow, deliberate. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature whimpered again, a low sound of anguish. Her golden eyes never left his, a flicker of something ancient and wild within their depths. He saw her struggle against the crushing weight, muscles tensing, then slumping in exhaustion. Her fur was matted with dust and a darker crimson, a stark contrast to its vibrant natural hue. Thorn assessed the situation. The beam above was unstable. One wrong move and the entire section could collapse, burying them both. He reached for his multi-tool, its worn metallic grip familiar in his hand. "Hold still," he instructed, though he knew she wouldn't understand the words. His tone, however, carried his intent. He began to clear the smaller pieces of rubble around the trapped paw, his movements precise. He used the pry bar attachment to test the integrity of a twisted ventilation shaft. The air vibrated faintly as he worked, a testament to the structure's fragile state. He moved with a firefighter's instinct, prioritizing safety while working against time. The creature watched him, her breathing shallow, her golden gaze locked onto his face, searching for threat or reassurance. Almost there, he murmured, more to himself than to her. He braced a heavy hydraulic jack against a sturdy piece of floor, slowly applying pressure to lift the support beam just enough. Groaning metal echoed through the ruins. Dust rained down, stinging his eyes. He risked a glance at her. Her eyes were still on him, but the primal fear had lessened, replaced by a strange, intense focus. With a final, straining push, the support shifted. A small gap appeared. Now he grunted. The red-furred woman pulled her paw free with a gasp, a low, guttural sound that was almost a sob. She dragged herself out of the cavity, collapsing just inches from Thorn. Her body trembled, exhausted, but her golden eyes remained fixed on him, burning with an unwavering intensity. Her panic had vanished, replaced by an overwhelming wave of silent gratitude. She nudged his hand with her muzzle, a soft, tentative gesture that spoke volumes. Then she let out a series of low growls, not aggressive but expressive, accompanied by small, urgent gestures with her freed paw. She placed it over her chest, then swept it towards him, a clear, unspoken declaration. "My life for yours." Thorn stared, a knot of surprise tightening in his chest. He had seen many strange things in the aftermath of the shield failure, but nothing like this. Her unique nature was undeniable, unsettling even, yet her distress had been so raw, so universal. He recognized the profound depth of her unspoken pledge, a fierce, primal loyalty. He knew instinctively she meant it. He pushed aside his wariness, accepting her silent vow. This was an alliance born of catastrophe, a bond forged in the dust. He reached into his pack, retrieving a salvaged ration bar. It was a simple protein block, but it represented sustenance, a shared resource. He offered it to her. She sniffed it cautiously, then took it with surprisingly gentle lips, devouring it quickly. Her golden eyes, still fixed on him, seemed to soften, a spark of warmth kindling within their depths. Thorn watched her, 100 questions swirling in his mind. Where had she come from? What was she? His world had just grown infinitely larger and more mysterious in the shattered ruins of Ethelberg. Their unexpected alliance had just begun. Thorn watched the red-furred woman devour the ration bar. Her intense gaze never left him. 100 questions swirled, but action was needed. Ethelberg offered no safe harbor. "We need to move," Thorn said, his voice low, testing the sound. He pointed to himself, then waved a hand forward. "Thorn, move." Elowen tilted her head, a low sound rumbling in her chest. She rose, favoring her mendied paw slightly, but her movements were fluid, powerful. She looked at him, then nudged his arm with her muzzle, a silent question. Where to go? Thorn gestured towards a less damaged street. North, towards the old market district, more cover. They walked. Thorn, with his firefighter's training, scanned for structural weaknesses. Elowen, however, moved differently. Her head swiveled constantly, golden eyes darting, ears twitching. She would pause, sniffing the air, then emit a soft growl, nudging Thorn away from a seemingly stable wall or pulling him back from a patch of rubble. Each time, Thorn saw evidence of her superior senses. A hairline crack he missed, a faint groan of stressed metal, a subtle shift in the ground. Her warnings were never wrong. "Safe," Thorn said, pointing to a sturdy overhang. Elowen watched his lips, then repeated the sound, a guttural, almost perfect mimicry. "Safe." A spark of understanding ignited within Thorn. She was learning. He pointed to a precarious, leaning skyscraper. "Danger." Elowen's ears flattened. She growled a low, warning sound, then repeated it. "Danger." Her intelligence was startling. It wasn't just mimicry. She understood the context. "Food," he said, holding up another ration bar. "Food." She copied him, her golden eyes bright. "Food." They continued this simple lesson as they navigated the ruins. Thorn pointed to the fractured ground. "Danger." Elowen would nod, stepping carefully. He pointed to a secure alleyway. "Safe." She would move into it with a relaxed posture. Their communication, though rudimentary, grew. Thorn felt a profound shift within himself. He had initially accepted her loyalty out of necessity, a strange pact in a shattered world. Now he saw beyond the red fur and golden eyes. He saw a quick, intelligent mind, a loyal companion. The initial wariness transformed into a growing sense of connection. He was no longer alone. He had a partner. One evening, as they rested near a collapsed fountain, Elowen let out a soft whine, looking up at the sky. She extended a clawed finger, tracing an invisible arc. Then she made a series of musical, almost whistling sounds Thorn had not heard before. She repeated them, her gaze fixed on him, as if willing him to understand. "What is it?" Thorn asked, watching her. She repeated the sounds, then pointed to herself, then back to the sky. She made the same sounds again, Lyraxis. Thorn connected the dots. Her home world. Lyraxis, he repeated, trying to match her inflection. It was a beautiful sound, full of a longing he could almost feel. She gave a soft, pleased growl. He understood. His world was not just larger, but infinitely richer with her presence. Their journey was interrupted by movement. Distant figures. 4 of them, human, lean, and desperate, emerged from behind a collapsed building, carrying scavenged tools. Their eyes, hollow and hungry, immediately fixed on Thorn and Elowen. "Look what we have here," one of them rasped, a thin man with a crude bludgeon. "Fresh meat and a pet." Elowen stiffened instantly. A low, menacing growl vibrated through her chest, a sound Thorn felt more than heard. Her hackles rose, and her form seemed to swell, becoming undeniably larger, more powerful. She stepped forward, placing herself directly between Thorn and the scavengers. Her golden eyes, previously warm, now burned with an ancient primal warning. She bared her teeth slightly, a silent promise of swift, overwhelming force. The bludgeon-wielding man hesitated. His companions, too, faltered, their eyes widening at the sight of her. They had expected an easy target. They found a guardian. Thorn remained still, trusting Alolan completely. He saw the shift in the scavenger's posture. Their bravado evaporated, replaced by genuine fear. Alolan wasn't attacking. She was simply being. Her presence was enough. The thin man swallowed hard. He exchanged a nervous glance with his group. The silent standoff stretched, thick with tension. Then he slowly lowered his bludgeon. "Not worth it," he muttered, turning to his companions. "Let's go, find something easier." They retreated, melting back into the shadows of the ruins. Alolan watched them go, her posture slowly relaxing only when they were completely out of sight. She turned back to Thorn, her golden eyes softening, a low, questioning whine escaping her. She nudged his hand with her muzzle, as if asking if he was all right. "I'm fine, Alolan," Thorn said, reaching out to gently stroke her fur. The texture was surprisingly soft beneath his touch. "You kept me safe." She leaned into his hand, a deep purr rumbling in her chest. The warmth of her acceptance filled him. He realized then that his responsibility for her was matched by her fierce dedication to him. They were two survivors from different worlds, forging an unbreakable bond in a broken one. They were a chosen family. The desolate city still held countless dangers, but with Alolan by his side, Thorn knew he wouldn't face them alone. Their journey continued, an alliance deepening with every shared step. Thorn and Alolan pressed north, the skeletal remains of buildings casting long, sharp shadows across their path. The old market district was a maze of collapsed stalls and twisted metal, but beyond it, Thorn remembered a large community school, built with reinforced concrete. It might offer better shelter, more stability. Alolan's nose twitched constantly, her ears swiveling, picking up distant sounds Thorn couldn't perceive. She would pause, nudging his hand, her golden eyes fixed on a specific direction, guiding him around precarious debris or warning him of unseen hazards. The air grew colder as they navigated the ruins. Alolan shivered, pressing closer to Thorn. He felt the warmth radiating from her thick fur, a surprising comfort in the desolate landscape. He pointed towards a distant, less damaged structure. "School," he said, enunciating the word slowly. "Safe, maybe." She rumbled softly, understanding. As they approached the school, a flicker of movement caught Thorn's eye. A figure stood silhouetted in a broken window, then ducked back inside. Alolan let out a low growl, a rumble of caution in her chest. Thorn placed a reassuring hand on her flank. "People," he murmured. "Careful." They entered the school through a gaping hole in its side, stepping into a cavernous gymnasium. The light filtering through the broken ceiling illuminated a makeshift camp. 4 figures huddled around a small, contained fire. Their heads snapped up as Thorn and Alolan entered. A man with sharp eyes and a trimmed beard rose from the group. He moved with an economical precision that spoke of training. "Hold there," he commanded, his voice firm. "Who are you?" "Thorn," he replied, keeping his voice calm. "Survivor. And this is Alolan," he gestured to his companion. The man's gaze lingered on Alolan, his expression unreadable but intensely scrutinizing. The other survivors shifted nervously, their eyes wide with apprehension. "Elias," the man introduced himself, "former strategist. We've been here since the shield collapse." He looked Alolan up and down. "And she is not human." "She's with me," Thorn stated, his voice even. "She saved my life." Elias nodded slowly, a thoughtful, almost calculated look on his face. "A valuable asset, then. Her senses must be keen." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over Alolan again, then to Thorn, then back to his group. "But we must be cautious. The shield malfunction was unprecedented. We don't know its true cause." His words were calm, but a subtle undercurrent of suspicion permeated them, aimed directly at Alolan. The other survivors exchanged uneasy glances. Alolan bristled slightly, sensing the shift in Elias' tone, the unspoken accusation. A low growl vibrated in her throat. Thorn gently placed a hand on her neck, a silent signal for her to stay calm. "We just need shelter," Thorn said, cutting to the point. "We won't cause trouble." Elias held up a hand. "Of course, we share what we have." His eyes, however, never truly left Aloan. "But for the safety of my people, I need to understand what she is, where she came from." He took a step closer, his hand reaching into his pocket. "Viridian has no creatures like her." Aloan tensed. Her golden eyes narrowed, a silent warning. She remembered the scavengers, the primal urge to protect Thorn. But Elias didn't carry a bludgeon. He held a small, metallic device, no bigger than his palm, with a single, glowing red indicator light. "You mentioned Lyraxis," Elias said, his voice dropping slightly. "When you were teaching her words outside the market. I overheard." His gaze was fixed on Aloan. "An off-world designation. Interesting." He pressed a button on the device. A high-pitched, almost imperceptible whine filled the air. Thorn heard it, a faint, irritating sound. But Aloan gasped, a guttural sound of pain. She recoiled, pressing her hands to her ears, a visible wave of agony washing over her. Her entire body spasmed, her fur standing on end. The sound was clearly excruciating for her. "What is that?" Thorn demanded, stepping in front of Aloan, his protective instincts flaring. Elias smiled, a chilling, humorless expression. He released the button and the whine ceased. Aloan sagged, breathing heavily, her eyes wide with a mixture of pain and fear. "A sonic deterrent," Elias explained, his voice calm, almost clinical. "A frequency that specifically targets alien auditory systems. Founded in a classified research facility outside Ethelberg. Never thought I'd need it." He held the device up. "It keeps us safe, Thorn, from unknowns." The other survivors, witnessing Aloan's distress, recoiled slightly, their fear of her now mixed with a strange, unsettling awe of Elias' control. Aloan whimpered, pressing herself against Thorn's back, her entire frame trembling. She felt exposed, vulnerable, an outsider in a way she hadn't experienced even in the immediate aftermath of the shield collapse. Thorn's steady presence was her only anchor. "Turn that off," Thorn commanded, his voice laced with uncharacteristic fury. "You're hurting her." "I'm asserting control," Elias corrected, "for the safety of everyone. She is an unknown variable, a potential threat. We need to understand her, study her even if necessary, for the good of the group." He gestured vaguely to the other survivors. "The planetary shield didn't just malfunction. There are theories, whispers of an external influence, an off-world connection." His eyes locked onto Aloan, perhaps from Lyraxis. Thorn felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Elias was not just suspicious, he was dangerous. He was preying on the fear of the other survivors, turning them against Aloan, twisting her origins into something sinister. "She's no threat," Thorn countered, his voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. "She's a survivor just like us, and she's my family. You will not harm her." He stood his ground, a rock against Elias' subtle, calculated aggression. Elias' suggestion of studying Aloan sent a shiver down Thorn's spine. He knew what that often meant. He resolved, with an unwavering certainty, that he would protect Aloan, no matter the cost. The gym's silence tightened. Elias' eyes, cold and assessing, met Thorn's determined stare. "No threat," Elias repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Your sentimentality will be the death of us all, Thorn. She is an unknown, a variable we cannot afford." He motioned to the three other survivors, who shifted uneasily but remained loyal to Elias' authority. "Secure them," he ordered. Two of them, a man named Kale and a woman called Lena, moved forward. The third, an older, quieter man named Jem, hesitated, his gaze briefly meeting Aloan's pained eyes. Aloan let out a low growl, a rumble of pure instinctual warning, pushing Thorn slightly behind her. Her red fur bristled. The pain from the device still lingered, but her protective instinct for Thorn was stronger. "Stand down, Aloan," Thorn muttered, placing a hand on her shoulder. He knew a direct fight against 4 humans, especially with Aloan weakened, was unwinnable. He needed a different approach. Kale, a burly man, lunged first, aiming for Thorn. Thorn sidestepped, using Kale's momentum to send him stumbling. Lena moved to flank Alolan. Elias stepped forward, the sonic device held ready. Do not resist. It will only make this harder. Thorn saw Elias' finger hovering over the activation button. He had to disable that device. Alolan, run, he commanded, a desperate plea. Elias' thumb pressed down. A high-pitched whine ripped through the air, sharper and more intense than before. Alolan cried out, a sound of pure agony, collapsing to her knees, clutching her head. Her body convulsed, muscles spasming uncontrollably. Golden eyes squeezed shut in torment. Thorn roared, a primal sound of rage. He charged Elias, ignoring Kale, who was now recovering. His only thought was the device. He tackled Elias, sending them both crashing to the concrete floor. The device clattered away, skittering across the smooth surface. Kale and Lena reacted instantly. Kale grabbed Thorn, pulling him off Elias. Lena lunged for the device. Jem, still hesitant, did nothing. Thorn struggled against Kale's grip. He kicked out, catching Kale in the knee, forcing him to release his hold. Thorn scrambled for the device, but Lena was faster. She scooped it up, her eyes wide with fear and determination. The device, Lena. Elias gasped, pushing himself up, rubbing his head. Activate it again. Don't let her recover. Lena hesitated, looking at Alolan's writhing form, then at Thorn's furious face. But she's all ready. Now Elias barked. Lena flinched. She pointed the device at Alolan, her hand shaking. The whine returned, a dreadful, piercing shriek. Alolan's cries intensified, her strength failing. She tried to push herself up, but her limbs would not obey. Thorn saw the desperation in Alolan's eyes, the utter helplessness. He knew she could not endure much more. He had to create a distraction, something definitive. He looked at the device, then at Elias. With a surge of adrenaline, Thorn lunged at Lena. She shrieked, fumbling the device. It flew from her grasp, tumbling towards the far wall. Elias cursed. Kale tackled Thorn from behind, bringing him down hard. Thorn's head struck the concrete with a sickening crack. A wave of dizziness washed over him, but he fought it. He saw Alolan, still suffering but now looking at him, a flicker of understanding in her pained gaze. Go, Thorn gasped, pushing Kale back with a desperate shove. Alolan, run now. He pointed towards the shattered window at the far end of the gymnasium, the one leading to the outside. It was a long shot, but their only chance. Alolan, despite the agonizing frequency, understood. She pulled herself to her feet, swaying, her movements uncoordinated. She whimpered, torn between the agony and Thorn's command. His eyes met hers, pleading, resolute. Go, Thorn yelled again, as Kale and Elias closed in on him. With a final, heart-wrenching glance at Thorn, Alolan launched herself forward. She stumbled, regaining her balance, and sprinted towards the broken window. The sonic device still blared, but she pushed through the searing pain, driven by Thorn's desperate order. Stop her, Elias shouted, but it was too late. Alolan, with a desperate leap, cleared the window, disappearing into the twilight ruins outside. Elias turned his fury on Thorn. You fool, you let her escape. Thorn lay on the ground, Kale's knee pressing into his back, Lena recovering the device. His head throbbed, a sharp, insistent pain. Blood trickled from a cut near his temple, but a small, grim satisfaction settled within him. Alolan was free. She's gone, Thorn managed, a defiant grin touching his lips. You won't catch her. Elias grabbed Thorn by the collar, pulling him upright. We will. And you, Thorn, will help us. His face was contorted with a cold, terrifying anger. You will regret this. Thorn met his gaze, his own eyes unwavering. He felt the sting of Kale's fist in his gut, then the sharp impact against his jaw. Darkness threatened to consume him. He welcomed it, knowing Alolan was no longer trapped. He had kept his promise. Outside, Alolan landed awkwardly, her injured paw flaring with renewed pain. The sonic frequency, though distant now, still vibrated painfully within her, a dull ache behind her eyes. The cold air hit her, a shock after the stifling warmth of the gymnasium. She scrambled away from the school, her senses overwhelmed. The familiar scent of Thorn was fading, replaced by the metallic tang of his blood, the sharp, acrid smell of fear from Elias and his group. Her vision blurred, tears of pain and confusion pricking at her golden eyes. She ran blindly at first through the shattered streets of Ethelberg. Each step was a battle against the lingering agony, against the disorientation. The world spun. Buildings loomed, skeletal and menacing. Debris crunched under her paws. Alone, the word echoed in her mind, a stark, terrifying realization. Thorn, her human, her protector, was gone, trapped because of her. A wave of despair washed over her, heavier than any physical blow. She remembered his voice, urgent, commanding her to run. His face etched with a desperate resolve. He had sacrificed himself for her. She stumbled, falling into a pile of rubble. The pain in her paw intensified. Her head throbbed. She curled into a ball, whimpering, the image of Thorn's defiant grin before the darkness consuming him burned into her memory. She was Lyraxian, strong, resilient, but here on this broken world she was just a target, a variable, an unknown. Elias' words, heavy with prejudice, replayed in her mind. A cold wind swept through the ruins, carrying dust and the distant, mournful creak of collapsing metal. Eloan shivered, not just from the cold but from a profound sense of loss. She closed her eyes, trying to focus, to find the deep wellspring of strength she knew lay within her. Thorn had shown her what loyalty meant, what family meant. He had chosen her, an alien, over his own kind, over his own safety. He had fought for her. Now she was alone, but she was free, free to choose. She lifted her head slightly, peering into the gloom. The pain was still there, but a new spark, a flicker of resolve, began to glow in her golden eyes. Thorn would not have sacrificed himself for her to simply give up. He had told her to run, not to hide. She pushed herself up slowly, deliberately. The ground was cold, the air was sharp, but she was moving, she was breathing, she was Eloan of Lyraxis. And Thorn, her Thorn, was still in that school. Her body still ached, a constant reminder of the sonic device, but her mind sharpened. She focused on the faint, residual scent of Thorn, now mixed with the acrid smell of fear and the metallic tang of his blood. She would follow it. She would find him. The despair had not left her, but it no longer paralyzed her. It fueled her. Thorn had saved her life. Now she would save his. Her senses guided her. The scent of Thorn's blood, faint but distinct, led her through the ravaged city outskirts. It mingled with the sharp tang of burnt metal and the lingering smell of human fear. She moved with a primal grace, her injured paw still a dull throb but her focus absolute. The despair had not vanished, but it had transformed into a relentless drive. Thorn had chosen her. She would choose him. She followed the trail for what felt like hours, the moonless sky offering little light. Gradually, the chaotic sprawl of ruins gave way to more organized, albeit still makeshift, structures. Scavenged materials formed rough barricades around a cluster of larger, relatively intact buildings. This was likely where Elias and his group had established their temporary stronghold. Eloan crouched low, observing. A few figures moved among the improvised defenses, carrying salvaged weapons. Their movements were wary, their faces grim. Human fear was a palpable thing, thick in the air. She needed to be invisible, a ghost in the shadows. Her enhanced Lyraxian senses scanned the perimeter, identifying weak points, patrol routes, the faint electrical hum of salvaged generators. Thorn's scent was stronger here, drawing her towards a building that looked like a repurposed administrative block, its windows mostly intact. She circled wide, keeping to the deepest shadows, her red fur blending almost perfectly with the rust-colored debris. She found a less guarded section, a collapsed wall partially obscured by overgrown vines, offering a precarious entry point. With careful precision, Aloan scaled the crumbling wall, her claws finding purchase in the cracked concrete. She moved silently, a whisper of motion in the night. Inside, the air was stale, echoing with the distant sounds of human voices. She navigated a maze of dark corridors, her golden eyes piercing the gloom, every sense alert to the slightest change. She overheard snippets of conversation, human words she now understood: supplies, patrols, the alien. Elia's name was mentioned with a mix of respect and apprehension. He was clearly in charge here. Her internal thought focused on Thorn. Where was he? Was he hurt? The questions gnawed at her, fueling her urgency. Following the strongest concentration of Thorn's scent, she found herself outside a reinforced metal door. A single guard stood post, leaning against the wall, his head bowed. Aloan pressed herself against the cold metal, listening. She could hear Thorn's shallow breathing from within, a weak but steady rhythm that brought a surge of relief, quickly followed by a fresh wave of anger at his captors. The door was locked, a heavy electronic mechanism, too loud to force. She needed a way in, a quieter way. She scanned the area, her gaze falling on a ventilation shaft high above the door. It was small, but perhaps if she could dislodge the grating. Just then the guard stirred, adjusting his grip on his weapon. Aloan froze, merging with the deepest shadows, her breathing almost imperceptible. The guard looked around, then shrugged, resuming his slumped posture. Aloan waited, patient, until he seemed to settle back into his weary watch. She needed to get past him without alerting anyone. Direct confrontation was not her goal. Not yet. She needed Thorn. She needed to understand what Elias wanted. Her eyes darted to a small, discarded toolbox near the guard's feet. A set of basic implements, possibly useful. She moved, a silent blur, snatching a thin, metallic rod from the box before retreating into the shadows again. The guard remained oblivious. Aloan returned to the ventilation shaft. It was a risky move, but Thorn was inside. She carefully inserted the rod into the grating, leveraging it with all her strength. The metal groaned softly, the screws protesting. She exerted more pressure, wincing as the effort sent a jolt of pain through her still-healing paw, but she pushed through it. Thorn had endured worse for her. With a final, strained creak, the grating popped free, falling silently onto a soft pile of dust below. Aloan quickly secured the rod and pulled herself up, her strong Lyraxian muscles propelling her into the narrow shaft. It was dark, dusty, and smelled of stale air and human desperation. She crawled forward, the confined space pressing in on her, but the thought of Thorn spurred her on. The shaft led downward, eventually opening into a small, dimly lit room. She could hear hushed voices through the vent, Thorn's among them. "You're making a mistake," Elia's, Thorn's voice, hoarse but defiant, carried clearly. "Aloan is not your enemy." A cold, analytical voice, Elia's, responded. "Perhaps not Thorn, but she is an unknown. And in this broken world, unknowns are liabilities, especially one with her capabilities." Aloan clenched her teeth, fury coiling in her gut. She could not see them, but the sound of Thorn's pain in his voice was clear. She needed to act. She needed to be smart. She saw a small, unsecured panel on the side of the shaft, directly above where the voices seemed to originate. She carefully nudged it open, peering down. Thorn sat slumped on a cot, his face bruised, a bandage wrapped around his head. Elias stood over him, holding a small, metallic device in his hand. Not the sonic one, but something else, something with blinking lights. Two other men stood guard, their expressions grim. "We merely wish to understand," Elias continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "To learn how your alien companion arrived here, how she survived the shield collapse. You protect her, Thorn, but you endanger us all." "She saved my life," Thorn countered, looking Elias directly in the eye despite his obvious pain. "More than once. She helped me. She is family." Elias merely shook his head. "Sentimentality in a time of crisis is a weakness, Thorn. I will find out what I need to know, with or without your cooperation." He gestured to one of his men. "Secure him. We have other ways to encourage information." Aloan's heart pounded. She needed to do something. Now, but a direct assault against 3 armed men in a confined space with Thorn as a hostage was reckless. She had to think. She had to be precise. Her golden eyes scanned the room, searching for an advantage. The device Elias held, what was it? It wasn't causing Thorn pain. Was it a communication device? A scanner? As the guards moved towards Thorn, Aloan knew her window of opportunity was closing. She could not allow them to harm him further. She had to create a distraction, a way to get to him, or at least to that device. She felt a surge of ancient Lyraxian power stirring within her, demanding release. But she had to control it. For Thorn. She watched as Elias turned, placing the blinking device on a nearby table, his attention now fixed on Thorn. This was her chance. She needed that device. It felt important. It might be the key. She would not let him be harmed further. She would find a way. The moment Elias turned, Aloan acted. With a silent grace that belied her powerful form, she dropped from the ventilation shaft, landing lightly on the table where Elias had just placed the blinking device. The impact was soft, barely a thud, but it was enough. The device clattered, skittering across the surface. Elias spun, his eyes widening in disbelief. The 2 guards reacted slower, their rifles clattering as they raised them. Aloan, however, was already in motion. She snatched the small metallic object, tucking it securely into a pouch on her side. "What in the void?" Elias exclaimed, his voice losing its controlled calm. One guard barked, "Get her," and lunged. Aloan met him with practiced efficiency. She didn't fight with raw aggression but with precise defensive blocks. A swift movement of her arm deflected his rifle, sending it spinning across the room. A second, controlled shove sent him stumbling backward, crashing into the other guard. They tangled, momentarily incapacitated. Thorn watched, his heart surging with a mix of fear and profound admiration. Her movements were a blur of red fur and focused intent. She wasn't just surviving, she was orchestrating. "Aloan," Thorn called, trying to stand, his bruised body protesting. "Run." She glanced at him, a flicker of warmth in her golden eyes, then turned back to Elias. Elias, recovering from his surprise, had pulled a stun pistol from his belt. He aimed it, his hand trembling slightly. "You're a wild animal," Elias snarled, "a dangerous variable. You will be contained." Aloan did not speak, but her posture communicated defiance. She stood between Elias and Thorn, a living shield. Her gaze was fixed on the stun pistol, assessing the threat. "She is not a variable," Thorn interjected, finding his voice despite the pain. "She is my partner. She saved me from the ruins, Elias. She is loyal." "Loyalty to an alien is treason to humanity," Elias shouted, his finger tightening on the trigger. Aloan let out a low, rumbling sound, a warning that vibrated through the room. It wasn't a growl of anger, but a deep, resonant challenge. She took a step forward, then another, her presence filling the confined space. Elias faltered, his resolve wavering under her intense, unwavering stare. The power radiating from her was palpable, not of brute force, but of an ancient, intelligent will. The 2 guards, having untangled themselves, now hesitated. They had seen Aloan's speed, her controlled strength. They looked to Elias, then at each other, doubt clouding their faces. "The device," Elias stammered, his eyes darting to Aloan's side. "Give it back." Aloan shook her head, a clear, decisive movement. Her hand went to the pouch, confirming its presence. "What is that thing, Elias?" Thorn asked, pushing himself up to a sitting position. "What were you going to do with it?" Elias glared at Thorn, then back at Aloan. "It's a communication scrambler. It prevents unauthorized transmissions, isolates us. It's for our safety, to keep this location secure." Aloan's internal thoughts raced. A scrambler, but the blinking lights had seemed to indicate activity, not suppression. She had a strong, primal sense that this device was more than Elias claimed. It felt like a key, a connection to something beyond this broken city. She had to secure it. He lies, Thorn said, his voice firm. He was going to use it to get information from me. He wants to know about you, Aloan. He wants to control you. Elia scoffed. Control is necessary in chaos. You're naive, Thorn. This creature, whatever she is, cannot be trusted. Aloan took another step, her movements deliberate. Her focus was not on fighting but on egress. She had the device. Thorn was safe for now. The guards were hesitant. She had created an opening. She turned her head slightly, meeting Thorn's eyes. In that silent exchange, a complete understanding passed between them. It was time to go. With a powerful leap, Aloan sprang towards the shattered window, not stopping to break it further but flowing through the jagged opening with impossible grace. She didn't look back, trusting Thorn to follow. Thorn, seeing her clear escape path, knew this was his moment. He pushed himself off the cot, ignoring the pain. Elia's, she's not the enemy, he declared. Then, with a burst of adrenaline, he sprinted towards the window Aloan had just vanished through. Elias screamed in frustration, firing his stun pistol. The bolt missed Thorn by inches, scorching the wall beside him. The guards, still disoriented, were too slow to react. Thorn threw himself through the window, landing hard on the debris-strewn ground outside. Aloan was already there, waiting, her golden eyes scanning the perimeter. She offered him a steadying hand, helping him rise. The air was cold, the ruins silent except for their hurried breathing. You took it, Thorn said, looking at the pouch on her side. The device. Aloan nodded, a slight tilt of her head. She knew it was important, felt it in her core. What now? Thorn asked, looking back at the fortified building, knowing Elias would not give up. Aloan nudged him forward, a gentle but firm push. She knew the way. Her senses extended, mapping the broken city, seeking a safe path, a new hiding place. She had saved Thorn. They were together again. The device was an unknown, a new piece in a complicated puzzle, but for now they had each other. Thorn felt a wave of relief wash over him, a deep, abiding warmth. Their bond, forged in the crucible of disaster, had just deepened irrevocably. They moved into the desolate urban landscape, a united front against the encroaching uncertainty, Aloan clutching the blinking device, a silent promise of new discoveries and further challenges ahead. They moved quickly, Aloan leading the way through a maze of collapsed structures and narrow alleyways. Her steps were silent, her movements fluid despite the previous pain. Thorn struggled to keep pace, his ribs aching from Elias' beating. He gritted his teeth, focused on her retreating form. Aloan glanced back, her golden eyes sensing his strain. She slowed her pace, waiting for him to catch up, then placed a supportive hand on his arm, a silent offer of strength. He nodded his thanks, appreciating her unspoken empathy. She guided him towards what looked like a solid, low-lying section of an old power station, partially buried but remarkably intact. A narrow crack in the reinforced concrete led to a hidden interior. Aloan squeezed through, then turned, pulling aside a twisted metal sheet to widen the opening for Thorn. Inside, it was dark but dry and surprisingly spacious, a perfect temporary refuge. Thorn slumped against a concrete support, exhaling slowly. Good spot, he rasped, pressing a hand to his side. Aloan dropped to her knees beside him, her sensitive nose brushing his bruised ribs. A low growl rumbled in her chest. She nudged his hand away, then gently licked the tender skin. It was a comforting gesture, a primal reassurance. Thorn winced but allowed it, feeling the warmth of her tongue. I'm all right, he managed, though the lie was evident. He looked at the device Aloan held. It pulsed with a soft, persistent light. Let's see that thing. She offered it to him. It was a sleek, metallic rectangle, surprisingly heavy for its size. The blinking light seemed to emanate from a small, clear panel. There were no visible buttons or switches. Elias said it was a scrambler, Thorn mused, turning it over in his hands. He used it to mess with communications, I think. Eloan tilted her head, watching his fingers trace the smooth surface. She leaned closer, sniffing the device, then let out a soft whine. "What is it?" Thorn asked, looking at her. "Something about it bothers you." She shook her head, then pointed to the blinking light, then to her own chest, a gesture indicating a deep, resonant feeling. It wasn't just a communication jammer. It felt like something more. Thorn pondered her reaction. Like a beacon, he wondered aloud, something that sends a signal. He ran his thumb over the light panel. He was trying to get information from me. About you. Maybe this thing can receive, too. He considered the possibility, a new line of thought forming. If it can scramble, it implies a network, a signal to disrupt. He remembered Elia's cryptic words about off-world connections. Could Elias have been trying to contact someone or something with this device, or prevent someone from being contacted? A distant sound, faint but distinct, reached Eloan's ears. Her head snapped up, golden eyes narrowing. She moved to the crack in the wall, peering out into the twilight. A low, urgent growl escaped her. "What is it?" Thorn pushed himself up, wincing. "Elias," she growled, the name a harsh sound, searching. Thorn felt a jolt of adrenaline. He knew Elias would not abandon his pursuit. He was meticulous, driven. "He'll have patrols out. We need to stay hidden." He turned his attention back to the device. If it could be a beacon or a receiver, it might be their only link to understanding the larger mystery of the shield malfunction. He pressed his palm against the smooth metal, feeling a faint warmth. If it's a communication device, there has to be a way to activate it properly, Thorn muttered, more to himself than Eloan. Elias wasn't just holding it. He was doing something with it. He recalled Elias placing it on the table right before Eloan snatched it. He remembered a subtle shift in Elias' posture, a focused intent. Eloan returned to his side, her gaze fixed on the device. She nudged his hand with her nose, then gently placed her paw on his, covering the device. A strange energy pulsed through her touch, a connection to the object itself. Thorn felt a faint vibration, not just from the device but through Eloan's paw. Her fur bristled slightly. "You feel something, don't you?" She nodded, a deep, knowing look in her eyes. She placed her other paw on the device, covering it completely, her head bowed as if listening. The blinking light intensified for a moment, then pulsed rhythmically. Thorn watched, captivated. This was beyond anything he understood. Eloan wasn't just holding it, she was interacting with it on a level he could fathom. Her connection to the device seemed almost organic. After a few moments, Eloan lifted her paws. The light on the device was no longer just blinking. It emitted a soft, steady glow, and a faint, almost inaudible static sound emanated from within. "You turned it on," Thorn breathed, astonished. "How did you do that?" Eloan looked at him, then back at the device, a sense of accomplishment in her gaze. She pointed to the light, then to her temple, indicating a mental connection. Lyraxian capabilities, he realized. Her species must have a different way of interacting with technology. He held the now glowing device. The static was clearer now, a low hiss. It was active, it was searching for something, or listening. "So it's not just a scrambler," Thorn said, a new resolve hardening his voice. "It's a receiver, maybe a transmitter." Elias wasn't trying to just stop people from talking. He was trying to control the conversation. He looked at Eloan, a surge of pride and affection washing over him. "You're incredible." Eloan nudged his hand again, a soft, purring sound in her throat. Her golden eyes met his, filled with a warmth that eased the tension in his battered body. They had a tool, a clue, and a new understanding. Elias was a threat, but now they had a way to fight back, or at least to understand what they were truly fighting against. The ruins outside seemed less daunting with this new piece of the puzzle. They had each other, and now, a path forward, however uncertain. Eloan's head snapped up. A low growl rumbled in her chest. The subtle vibrations she had felt earlier intensified, no longer distant. Elias was closer than Thorn anticipated. "He's here," Thorn said, recognizing the shift in her demeanor. He gripped the glowing device. "Can you tell how close?" She moved to the entrance of their refuge, a dark opening in the power station wall that led to a narrow, forgotten maintenance tunnel. She sniffed the air, her golden eyes scanning the desolate landscape visible through the gaps in the rusted metal. "Soon," she rumbled, a word Thorn now understood. Her fur bristled, a faint static charge evident around her. "We need to know what he's looking for," Thorn stated, his gaze fixed on the device. "If it's a receiver, maybe we can hear something. What do you think?" Aloan returned to him, nudging the device with her snout. She placed a paw over it, her ears twitching. The faint static from the device seemed to pulse in sync with her concentration. Her brow furrowed, a sign of deep focus Thorn had come to recognize. He watched, fascinated by her unique interaction with the alien tech. She wasn't merely listening with her ears, she was sensing. After a tense silence, Aloan lifted her paw. She made a series of chuffing sounds, then pointed to the device, then to her head. "Sound," she vocalized, then gestured with her paw, indicating a broken, fragmented stream. "You're getting something," Thorn realized, his heart quickening. "Can you filter it? Focus on specific frequencies." She closed her eyes, placing both paws on the device again. The soft glow brightened. This time, a faint, almost subliminal buzz emanated from it beneath the static. Thorn leaned closer, straining to hear. It was a jumble of low-frequency whispers, almost like a ghost in the machine. Aloan shifted, her muscles tensing. She pulled her paws away abruptly, her expression troubled. She looked at Thorn, then pointed vaguely northeast. "Signal," she said, her voice a low, guttural murmur. "Not us, not Lyraxis." Thorn's mind raced. "Not us, not your people. What does that mean?" He held the device up, examining it. "Are you saying Elias isn't just looking for us or for a Lyraxian scout? He's tracking something else entirely." She nodded emphatically. "Signal strong, far." She pointed to the device. "He wants." This was a major twist. Elias wasn't merely a paranoid survivor trying to control alien tech or capture Aloan for study. He was after something specific, something powerful enough to warrant this relentless pursuit. "A signal," Thorn repeated, thinking aloud. "A beacon, maybe. An energy source." Aloan pressed her head against Thorn's shoulder, a gesture of shared understanding and growing trust. Her warmth was a comfort against the cold reality of their situation. He felt a profound surge of affection for her, this remarkable being who saw beyond the obvious, whose senses revealed secrets hidden from human perception. She was his anchor in this storm. "Can you track this signal, Aloan?" Thorn asked, a new plan forming in his mind. "If Elias is chasing it, maybe we should too. If we can get to it first, we might understand what's really going on." Her golden eyes met his, filled with an intelligent spark. She took the device from his hand, holding it carefully. She gave a single, determined nod. "We find." Thorn felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just running anymore, they were hunting. Elias' motivation was clearly more complex than simple fear or power hunger. The device wasn't just a receiver, it was a key. A distant metallic clang echoed from outside the power station. Elias' people were close, too close. "They're coming," Thorn said, his voice low. "We need to go, now." Aloan already moved with silent grace towards the maintenance tunnel. She paused, looking back at Thorn, a silent question in her eyes. He understood. She was asking if he was ready to follow her into the unknown, to chase a signal that might lead them into even greater danger. Thorn met her gaze, a small, confident smile on his face. "Lead the way, Aloan." He trusted her implicitly more than anyone he had ever known. His hand reached out, gently brushing her fur. The connection between them was a tangible force, stronger than any fear. They would face whatever lay ahead together. The device glowed steadily in her paw, a guiding light in the encroaching darkness. They had a destination now, however perilous, and with Aloan's unique gifts, they might just uncover the truth before Elias did. Aloan led Thorn deeper into the maintenance tunnel, her movements fluid and silent. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of damp earth and disused machinery. The alien device pulsed steadily in her paw, its light a soft, golden guide in the gloom. "Which way, Aloan?" Thorn's voice was a low murmur, conscious of the echoes. She paused, tilting her head. Her ears swiveled, catching sounds Thorn could not. She pointed forward with her snout, then nudged him, urging him onward. The tunnel branched. Aloan held the device higher. Its glow intensified slightly towards the left passage. She gave a firm, confident nod. Thorn followed, his hand occasionally brushing the cold metal walls. He relied entirely on Aloan's senses, a humbling yet reassuring surrender. Her perception was a world beyond his own. He watched her profile, the way her golden eyes scanned the shadows, the subtle shifts in her posture. She was a living compass, attuned to frequencies and energies that remained invisible to him. "The signal, is it getting stronger?" Thorn asked. Aloan made a soft, rumbling sound, a sound of affirmation. She gestured with her free paw towards the device, then tapped her own temple. "Lyraxis," she whispered, her voice surprisingly clear in the enclosed space. "Call." Thorn frowned, a Lyraxian call, like a distress beacon. She nodded, then shook her head, a complex motion. She pointed to the device again, then traced an intricate pattern in the air with her claw. More, she conveyed. "Message." A message, not just a simple ping, but information. This changed everything. Elias wasn't just chasing an energy signature, he was trying to intercept a communication. The implications were staggering. Were Aloan's people trying to contact her, or was it something else entirely? The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to move in single file. Aloan led, her enhanced night vision easily navigating the uneven ground. Thorn stumbled once, catching himself on a rusted pipe. He felt a moment of frustration at his own human limitations, but it quickly faded, replaced by gratitude for Aloan's unwavering capability. She was his eyes, his ears, his shield. A metallic scrape echoed from behind them, distinct, close. Aloan froze, her head snapping back, her ears flattened. She let out a low, guttural growl, a warning. "Danger," she hissed, pulling Thorn back against the wall. Thorn flattened himself, heart pounding. "Elias." She nodded grimly. The sound of heavy boots, hushed but discernible, grew louder. They were being hunted. Aloan scanned the tunnel ahead. A section of the ceiling had collapsed, creating a jagged, precarious gap. Too small for a human to squeeze through easily, but perhaps for her. She looked at Thorn, her golden eyes conveying a swift decision. She gestured for him to stay low, then, with incredible agility, she scaled the debris, testing each foothold. Dust rained down. She moved through the narrow opening and then turned, extending a powerful paw back towards him. "Come," she urged, her voice a low imperative. Thorn hesitated. The gap looked impossibly tight, the rubble unstable, but Aloan's confidence was infectious. He trusted her. He reached for her paw, feeling the immense strength in her grip. She pulled, guiding his body through the tight space. He scraped his shoulder, gritted his teeth against the pain. Once through, Aloan immediately took point again. The device in her paw throbbed with a stronger light now, illuminating an unexpected sight. The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber, not natural, but clearly an old, forgotten control room for the power station. Dust-covered consoles lined one wall, their screens dark, their panels scarred by time and neglect. The signal was strongest here, a palpable presence. The device in Aloan's paw was no longer just glowing, it vibrated, humming with an almost eager energy. She walked directly to a large, rectangular console, its surface covered in a layer of fine gray dust. "This is it," Thorn breathed, looking around the eerie chamber. "The source." Aloan placed the device gently onto a flat, unmarred section of the console. The device pulsed rapidly, its golden light expanding, seeming to merge with the dormant technology. A faint, high-pitched whine emanated from the console itself. One of the dark screens flickered. Thorn watched, mesmerized. He had never seen anything like it. Aloan's connection to the device and now the console felt organic, deeply intuitive. It was as if her very presence was waking the sleeping machine. The screen sputtered to life, displaying a cascade of symbols Thorn did not recognize. Lyraxian script, data. Aloan leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. She touched the screen with a single claw, then looked at Thorn, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and concern. Old, she whispered. Broken. She pointed to a specific sequence of symbols on the screen. Warning. A warning, Thorn asked, stepping closer. From the Lyraxians about what? Before Aloan could elaborate, the distinct sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance they had just used. Elias and his men were here. They had caught up. Aloan whirled, her body instantly shifting into a defensive stance, placing herself between Thorn and the tunnel. The screen behind her flickered, displaying a single, stark image, a schematic of Ethelberg with a prominent, pulsing red 10 over the very power station they were in. And beneath it, a countdown. Not to 0, but to a number that indicated immense structural instability. They found us, Thorn said, his voice grim. But what is that? What does it mean? Aloan's golden eyes met his, filled with a new, urgent understanding. Not just message, she conveyed, her voice low and strained. Destabilize, collapse. The device on the console pulsed frantically, its light now a brilliant, alarming crimson. The warning on the screen was undeniable. This wasn't just a communication. It was an alarm, a desperate last-ditch effort to warn of an impending catastrophe directly beneath their feet. They had found the signal, but it was far more dangerous than they had imagined. Thorn looked at Aloan, his trust absolute, his resolve hardened. They were not just running or hunting a signal. They were now in a race against time. Elias' voice, amplified by the confined space, barked orders from the tunnel entrance. Fan out. They're in here. Don't let them reach any console. No time, Thorn muttered, his gaze snapping from Aloan to the red 10 on the screen, then to the tunnel opening. The structural integrity countdown was visible now, a stark percentage shrinking rapidly. He understood. This wasn't just a threat. It was a death sentence for anyone inside. Aloan didn't hesitate. She snatched the pulsing alien device from the console. Run, she commanded, her voice raw with urgency. She pointed with a swift claw towards a heavy maintenance hatch on the far side of the room, directly opposite Elias' entry. It was an old, rusted thing, likely leading to another service passage. Thorn was already moving. He slammed his shoulder into the hatch, grunting with effort. The ancient metal groaned, refusing to budge. Stuck, he yelled over the increasing rumble from the collapsing structure. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Dust began to rain from the ceiling. Aloan pressed the device against the hatch. A soft, high-pitched whirring emanated from it, and a faint blue energy pulsed over the metal. The hatch shuddered, then slowly began to grind open, revealing a dark, narrow shaft. Quick, she urged, pulling Thorn through the opening. Just as Thorn squeezed past, a section of the control room ceiling tore free, crashing down where he had just stood. A wave of concussive force slammed into them, throwing them forward into the dust-choked passage. The hatch clanged shut behind them, sealing them away from Elias, but also from the main collapse. Are you all right? Thorn gasped, pushing himself up, his hand immediately checking Aloan. She nodded, her golden eyes scanning the inky blackness ahead. The pulsing device in her hand cast flickering shadows. Tunnel, she whispered, lower. The passage sloped sharply downwards, the air growing colder and heavier. Thorn could feel the vibrations of the larger structure above them, a continuous, unsettling tremor. He followed Aloan, his hand resting lightly on her back, guiding her with silent support. He trusted her senses completely. This was her world, her technology, her warning. Where does this lead? Thorn asked, his voice echoing in the confined space. Out, Aloan replied, her gaze fixed on the device which now pulsed with a new, frantic pattern. It wasn't just guiding them, it was actively mapping the structural decay around them, showing her safe paths and imminent dangers. She pointed to a faint shimmer in the darkness ahead. Vent. Access. They reached a series of intertwined ventilation shafts, too small for Thorn to easily navigate. Aloan effortlessly slipped into the largest opening, then turned, extending a hand to him. Crawl, she instructed. Thorn gritted his teeth. He wasn't built for tight spaces, but he forced himself through, his knees and elbows scraping against the metal. The air here was thick with the scent of old machinery and dust. He could hear the distant, terrifying sounds of the power station tearing itself apart, groaning metal, shattering concrete. Faster, Thorn, Aloan's voice was strained. She was using her enhanced senses to plot their course through the crumbling infrastructure, every instinct screaming at her. The device in her hand glowed a desperate crimson, indicating the speed of the structural decay. They crawled for what felt like an eternity, the vibrations growing stronger, the sounds of destruction closer. Thorn felt a pang of fear, not for himself, but for Aloan. She was pushing herself to the limit, interpreting complex data while navigating a physical labyrinth under extreme pressure. Suddenly, the shaft ended abruptly, opening into a small, dark chamber. Aloan dropped lightly to the floor, Thorn following clumsily behind. The chamber had a single, heavy steel door, clearly an emergency exit. "This is it," Thorn said, already reaching for the door's massive locking mechanism. He wrestled with the rusted handle, throwing his weight against it. It slowly gave way, the ancient gears grinding loudly. As the door opened a crack, a deafening roar erupted from behind them. The ground shook violently, throwing them both off balance. The power station was collapsing. The entire structure was giving way. Thorn threw the door open, revealing a glimpse of the outside world, a desolate gray dawn breaking over the ruined city. He pulled Aloan through, shielding her body with his own as debris began to rain down around them. They stumbled out onto a cracked concrete apron, just as the entire control room section of the power station imploded, sending a massive cloud of dust and pulverized concrete into the air. They ran, not looking back, driven by primal instinct. They sprinted across the open space, the air thick with dust and the acrid smell of burnt wiring. Thorn felt the ground shudder beneath his feet, a seismic tremor that indicated the wider planetary shield malfunction was still at play, or perhaps the power station's destruction had triggered something worse. They dove behind a partially intact wall of a nearby, smaller building, collapsing into a heap, gasping for breath. The rumble subsided, leaving an eerie silence punctuated by the distant groans of settling wreckage. Thorn looked at Aloan, her fur matted with dust, her golden eyes wide and exhausted but still alert. The device in her hand had dimmed, its frantic pulsing softened to a steady, urgent glow. "We made it," Thorn whispered, his voice hoarse. He reached out, gently brushing dust from her cheek. "You saved us." Aloan leaned into his touch, a soft, purring sound rumbling in her chest. "Together," she corrected, her gaze holding his. The devastation of Ethelberg was still visible, an ever-present scar, but their shared escape, their reliance on each other, forged their bond deeper still. The immediate danger was past, but the larger catastrophe still loomed, calling them forward. Thorn felt the urgent pulse of the device in Aloan's hand, a rhythm now mirroring his own pounding heart. The dust settled around them, revealing the ruined city stark against the gray dawn. "Destabilize, collapse," Thorn repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Aloan, what exactly does that mean? The power station just imploded, but the message was bigger, wasn't it?" Aloan nodded, her golden eyes fixed on the softly glowing alien device. "The Lyraxian message. It is a warning for Ethelberg itself." She gestured vaguely towards the horizon, her palm moving in a sweeping motion. "The planetary shield malfunction. It did not just destroy buildings. It created a resonance deep within the planet's crust. Thorn's blood ran cold, a resonance like a tremor. More than a tremor, Aloan clarified, her brow furrowing. A structural degradation. The message indicates a cascading failure. The ground beneath us, the bedrock, it is failing. Ethelberg will not just crumble, it will descend. Thorn stared at her, the implications chilling him to the bone. Descend? Into what? Into the planetary mantle, Aloan stated, her voice grim. Slowly at first, then rapidly. The entire city, the land mass around it, a cataclysm. The shield malfunction was not an event, it was a trigger. A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the distant creak of settling wreckage. Thorn felt a profound wave of despair, quickly replaced by a fierce resolve. They had escaped a collapsing building only to be on the verge of a collapsing world. How long? Thorn asked, his jaw tight. Aloan closed her eyes, concentrating on the device. Its glow intensified slightly, then dimmed. The message is fragmented, warning of accelerating destabilization. Weeks perhaps, days if a critical fault is reached. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. We need more data. The device needs a stronger signal to fully translate the depth of the warning. And Elia's? Thorn looked towards the general direction of Elia's fortified stronghold. He was chasing the signal. Does he know this? Unlikely, Aloan rumbled. He sought the device, its power, not the true message. His fear of the unknown blinded him to the larger threat. Thorn stood, brushing dust from his torn firefighter's jacket. If the whole city is going down, he needs to know. Everyone needs to know. Aloan stood beside him, her gaze unwavering. He will not listen. He will believe it is a trick, a Lyraxian deception. Then we make him listen, Thorn declared, a new purpose hardening his resolve. He has resources, people. He's a strategist. If we can get him the full message, he might understand. He might even help. Aloan tilted her head, a low sound rumbling in her chest. An unexpected alliance with an enemy. The planet doesn't care about enemies, Thorn countered, looking at the devastation around them. Only survivors. He has a stronger communication array at his stronghold, doesn't he? Something that could boost this device's signal. Aloan nodded slowly. Yes, a salvaged comms hub. He uses it to try and find other human settlements. Thorn knew the risks. Going back towards Elia's meant walking into a trap, but the alternative was a slow, inevitable doom. He thought of the other scattered survivors, the families he had seen in the initial days after the shield malfunction. They deserved a chance. Then we go to him, Thorn said, his voice firm. Not to fight, but to warn, and to use his equipment to get the full picture, whatever it takes. Aloan's golden eyes held a flicker of apprehension, then settled into a determined gaze. She gripped the device tighter. It will be dangerous. He will not welcome us. I know, Thorn replied, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. But we face a greater danger now. Elia's is a small threat compared to an entire planet breaking apart. They moved out from behind the partial wall, heading northeast, towards the cluster of buildings that formed Elia's stronghold. The device in Aloan's hand pulsed with a gentle urgency, a beacon of critical information they desperately needed to unlock. Thorn felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Their journey had shifted again, from escape to a desperate, audacious mission to save a world that was already dying. He looked at Aloan, her powerful, loyal presence a steady anchor in the chaos. Together, they would face whatever came next. The cluster of salvaged buildings loomed, stark against the graying sky. Aloan moved with silent purpose, Thorn close behind, navigating the treacherous debris field surrounding Elia's stronghold. She gripped the alien device, its pulse a quiet thrum against her palm. Guards patrol the perimeter, Aloan whispered, her voice a low growl pointing towards a faint flicker of movement near a reinforced gate. 2 shifts, heavy weapons. Thorn nodded. We're not fighting them, we're convincing them. He scanned the makeshift walls. Where? That comms hub. Aloan led him around a collapsed structure, revealing a taller, intact building topped with a dish array. Third floor, heavily fortified. They waited for a patrol to pass. Then Aloan darted forward, scaling a broken wall with impossible grace. Thorn followed, finding purchase in crumbling masonry, his firefighter training serving him well. They reached a shadowed ledge overlooking an inner courtyard. Access point. Aloan indicated a ventilation shaft large enough for Thorn to squeeze through. Leads to the comms room directly. One guard inside. Thorn looked at her. You take him out non-lethal. I'll be right behind you. She gave a brief nod, her golden eyes glinting with understanding. As Thorn began to pry open the grating, Aloan slipped away, a ghost in the shadows. A muffled thud echoed from within the building a moment later. Thorn pulled himself into the shaft, crawling through the dusty darkness. He dropped silently into the comms room, finding the guard unconscious and secured. Aloan stood ready beside the complex comms console. The room contained several screens, blinking lights, and a massive, salvaged communication dish visible through a reinforced window. Elias sat at a desk in a far corner, hunched over a holopad, startled by their sudden appearance. His eyes widened, fixing on Aloan, then Thorn. You, Elias snarled, scrambling for a sidearm holstered beneath his desk. Stop, Elias, Thorn commanded, stepping forward. We aren't here to fight you. We're here to save your life and everyone else. Elias hesitated, his hand hovering over the weapon. Save me. From what, your alien pet? He gestured wildly at Aloan, who stood calmly by the console, the pulsing device held aloft. This alien pet is trying to prevent a planetary collapse, Thorn retorted, his voice unwavering. The shield malfunction wasn't just a localized disaster. It triggered a chain reaction. Ethelberg is sinking. Elias scoffed. Propaganda, a Lyraxian trick. You think I haven't seen the tremors, isolated seismic activity, nothing more. Aloan moved, placing her device onto a connecting port on Elias' comms console. With a soft click, the console's primary screen flickered, then displayed a complex Lyraxian schematic. The red 10 over Ethelberg pulsed, now accompanied by a rapidly decreasing countdown. The screen then shifted to a series of geological scans, showing massive fissures spreading deep into the planet's mantle. This is the full message, Aloan stated, her voice surprisingly clear. From my people, a warning. Your planetary core is destabilizing. The landmass of Ethelberg will be fully submerged within 3 planetary cycles. Elias stared, his face paling, fear replacing defiance. The geological data was irrefutable. His own advanced sensors had hinted at anomalies, but he had dismissed the worst implications. My God, he whispered, it's real. He looked at Aloan, then Thorn. Why would your people warn us? Because they are not invaders, Thorn said, his gaze firm. They are scientists, explorers. Aloan was a scout. The shield malfunction sent a distress signal, a garbled one, across systems. They detected it. Elias slumped back in his chair, the fight draining from him. A distress signal. I thought it was an invasion beacon, a prelude to conquest. He looked at Aloan, genuine regret in his eyes. I feared the unknown. I saw a threat where there was none. Fear can blind you, Aloan replied, her voice soft but steady. My people monitor this sector. We identified a rapid core destabilization after the shield event. We sent a scout me to investigate. I was trapped. The message you see is a desperate attempt to warn you all. Thorn stepped closer to the console. Elias, you have a powerful comms array. We need to boost this signal, translate it into Veridian and broadcast it to every survivor, to the entire planet if possible. There might still be time for evacuation, for stabilization efforts. Elias looked at the countdown, then at the geological maps. His strategist's mind, once focused on defense, now shifted to survival. It's audacious, risky, But if it's true, he stood, moving to the console, his fingers flying across the controls, overriding security protocols. I can patch it into the planetary broadcast grid, but it will take power, a lot of power. We'll be exposed. We're exposed already, Elias, Thorn countered. The planet is collapsing. What have we got to lose? Eloan placed her hand on the device, channeling her Lyraxian energy. The console hummed, lights flashing as the signal amplified, pulsing outward. On the main screen, the complex Lyraxian script rapidly translated into Veridian, a stark, urgent warning appearing for all to see. A new signal registered on the console, faint at first, then rapidly strengthening. It wasn't from Ethelberg. Incoming, Elias breathed, his eyes wide. Multiple signatures, not human. Eloan smiled, a rare, gentle expression. My people, they heard the full signal. On the main screen, 3 sleek silver ships appeared, descending through the atmosphere. They were not warships, but elegant transports, bearing the distinctive Lyraxian insignia. They settled gently on the outskirts of the city, their landing lights illuminating the desolate landscape. Within minutes, a new voice crackled through the comms. Veridian Prime, this is Lyraxian search and rescue vessel, Star Weaver. We are here to offer aid and assistance for your planetary crisis. We detect one of our own. Eloan, is that you? Eloan stepped forward, speaking into the comms. It is, Commander. I am here with Thorn, a human ally. We have vital data regarding the planetary core destabilization. The voice on the comms responded, full of relief. Excellent, Eloan. Our geological scans confirm the dire situation. We have stabilization technology and rapid evacuation protocols. We are here to help. Elias stared at the screen, then at Eloan, then at Thorn. They actually came to help. He looked humbled, his former prejudices shattered by the overwhelming truth. Days turned into weeks. Lyraxian engineers, working alongside human survivors, began to deploy advanced energy conduits, creating a network to stabilize the planet's core. Massive transport ships ferried survivors to safer, temporary shelters on other continents, and eventually to Lyraxian vessels for transit to newly discovered habitable worlds. The cooperation was unprecedented, an alliance forged in the crucible of shared disaster. Thorn and Eloan remained in Ethelberg, coordinating efforts, their partnership now a symbol of the burgeoning interspecies cooperation. Elias, stripped of his authority but not his strategic mind, became an invaluable asset, directing human resources and communicating with the Lyraxians. One evening, as the last of the stabilization conduits powered up, bathing the city in a soft, ethereal glow, Thorn stood with Eloan atop a partially repaired building. The Lyraxian ships formed a silent armada in the sky, a testament to a future saved. They offered me passage home, Eloan said, her golden eyes reflecting the shimmering lights. To Lyraxis. Thorn's heart ached with a familiar pang of apprehension, but he kept his voice steady. And what did you tell them? She turned, her hand gently touching his arm. I told them my home is here now, with you. Her gaze held a warmth that transcended language, a devotion he had come to cherish. You saved me, Thorn, and you showed me what it means to be truly loyal, truly family. My place is with you, bridging our worlds. Thorn pulled her close, resting his head against her red fur. The scent of her, wild and comforting, filled his senses. I wouldn't have it any other way, Eloan. He looked out at the city, now scarred but not doomed, a beacon of hope. We'll build something new here, together. His solitary life had been shattered, only to be rebuilt with an unexpected alliance, an interstellar romance, and a purpose larger than he could have ever imagined. The future was uncertain, but with Eloan by his side, Thorn knew they could face anything. Their story was just beginning, a testament to the power of connection in a universe full of surprises.